Hi, everybody. This is Kathy L. Murphy, the Pulpwood Queen, reporting from my little cabin in the woods, Murphy's Law. And today, it's a really big day because it is the book launch for another fabulous International Pulpwood Queens and Timber Guys book club selection. Read. And as you can see it here, we have the Paris Library book launch party with Jeanette Skeslien Charles. Hi, Janet.
Hi, Kathy. Thank you so much for selecting the book, and thank you for having me all the way from Paris, France. I sure appreciate it.
Well, I have to tell you, this morning's been pretty exciting because I've been on the internet this morning with all my blogger friends. Everybody is really pumped. Pros in the Pandemic's been sharing you Elizabeth book reviews. Everybody's excited about your book. And just the trajectory from when we first had you at our book club convention to today has been building. You're becoming an international book sensation. So
well, thank you. That's thanks to you and your kind invitations. And I have been loving the posts I've been able to do on the Bubbles page, and people have responded so kindly.
yes, for those of you that do not know, we have partnered with this California winery in Sonoma called Breathless Wines, and they pair our books with their wine. And in celebration of your book launch, I have I wish I had this for you, but this is a bottle of the wonderful Breathless award-winning wine. And I even have some little bubbles I was going to blow at the end. So I am very excited about everything that's happening. You're blogging on there all this week because you're our guest host as a bonus book club selection. And if I had known about your book earlier, you would definitely be a book of the month. But let me tell you, the bonus book club selections are just as important as the book of the month, because some of our past bonus book club selections have been that won our bonus book of the year. Jamie Ford's Hotel in the Corner, Bitter and Sweet. We had The Fighter by Michael Ferris Smith. We've had Jeanette Walls. She wrote The Glass Castle. So you're in really good company. But all of our books, I get so excited because what is wonderful about the books that I receive is that yours came to me via a galley. Simon Schuster has been sending galleys for years to my book club festival. And all the attendees came to me and said, you know, of all the galleys that we read, this is the one we love. Because you know what? If you're a reader, you love libraries. I mean, it's just a given fact. My book club members, the majority of them are librarians, teachers, educators, retired librarians, teachers, educators, because we understand the value of reading. But what is amazing about your book is, you know, here in the United States, I've picked a lot of books about libraries, like Ronald Tigman's book, Through the Stars, Through Difficulties. There's been a lot of books through the years, but I did not know the story about the Paris Library. And of course, being a person who's armchair traveled most of my life and now has spent the last 20 years of mine traveling abroad with my Pulpwood Queens, I cannot think of a better book for us to be reading than your book. So this all came about. You're from Montana.
Yes.
Which, you know, that was a surprise to me because, you know, even though I read your book and everything, a lot of times I don't know the backstory. So this is your opportunity to share with us your backstory on your wonderful book. So tell us a little bit about more, how in the world did you get from Montana to Paris, France?
Well, I'll tell you just a little bit about my book and then a little bit about myself. It's World War II. Paris is occupied. There's a war on words, and it's Nazis versus American librarians, and the librarians win. So that's just the bare bones story of my book. And to get to World War II Paris, we start in Montana, where I grew up. I lived on the same street as a French war bride, And that's where my love of French came. And Claudine Maynard was my neighbor. She was from Rouen. She met her husband, who was an American GI. Rouen isn't that far from the Normandy D-Day beaches. She married him and she traveled to Shelby, Montana with him. So she went from a big city to this teeny tiny small town on the plains. And she's just such a brave lady, you know, leaving behind her family, leaving behind her friends, and going towards this uncertain future where, you know, I think at the time they couldn't even really call home. Letters were really slow going back and forth, and it wasn't even really sure that she'd be able to take the ship back again. So I have always admired her courage, and I've always wanted to write about a war bride. And so I knew, even though my book takes place in a library in France, I knew one of the characters had to be a war bride.
It's fascinating the seeds that are planted when we're younger, because for me, I lived next door to the Mariannes in a small town in Kansas. And their aunt, I always knew her as Madame Basham, was married to a local doctor, and she was the high school French teacher. So every Friday, she would go to this big Italian, Catholic family's home, and she'd teach all the children French lessons. Now, think about that in a small town in Kansas. And I would watch from the neighboring bushes, and I would just think, oh, if I could only take French lessons. So as soon as I got in ninth grade, I signed up for Madame Basham's French classes. And my name was Virginie, because you had to have a French name, and my best friend was Veronique. And we loved French class and took it all through high school. And then I took it in college, and I have to laugh because the last semester, if it hadn't been for my brilliant friend Connie Nutter, I don't think I would have made it through French too, because we had a Belgium teacher. I couldn't understand her French. There's dialects, and even when I went over to France, when I finally got there, it was difficult. So how has that been for you, doing the research for this book, working over there? I'm sure you're speaking fluent French now.
Well, I'll say just like you, I had a French name in my French class and it was Chantal. And I do think that's a really fun thing to do. It gives kids a different identity and gives you kind of a dream of maybe a different life, or just something a little different or out of the way. So I really admire that about French teachers, because I think that's one of the fun things that they do, because even the names are different. The culture is different, the name is different. Virginie and Veronique, and Chantal, it's very different. So well, I studied French. I had 2 years at the Shelby High School in Montana, had really nice French teachers. French was hard though.
Yes,
The
it
grammar,
was.
it's, and you have a 50-50 chance with the masculine and feminine, which I still don't master. And I can tell you, when I was writing my book, I made a mistake that the copy editor found, because the word orange can either be an adjective as a color, or it can be a noun as a fruit. And one is masculine and one is feminine. I can't remember which is which, but it was the copy editor who found that mistake. But I've been living here for 20 years, and I did not realize that orange could be masculine or feminine depending on you could say, it's a sunburnt orange, and then it would be masculine, I think, and then orange would be feminine, I think. Viewers will tell us. So French is always challenging, and it always keeps you on your toes. And so even when you think you're mastering things or doing things quite well, there's always a little something that will make you ask questions or look a little deeper. And so that's a really nice thing to have in your life, because it just, it's just like doing jigsaw puzzles or crossword puzzles. It just keeps you curious, keeps your mind moving, like reading as well.
I can still read French and understand what I'm reading, and I love watching foreign films, but I'm still very intimidated by, when I was there, they don't, I hate to say the word they, but in my experience, when you speak French and you don't pronounce it correctly, you can tell there is a little bit of a disdain for you're pronunciating things. So it was a little intimidating to me, but I'm learning that the only way you're ever going to learn anything is to fully embrace yourself in it. I would love to. 20 years, what a wonderful thing for you. What a wonderful opportunity to live abroad. I've always wanted to live abroad. And so this is 20 years. And so you're married to an American, is that correct?
I'm married to a Frenchman.
Oh,
I'm married to a
he's
Frenchman.
French. Okay. Yes.
Yes, and so we met here on my first day. I flew into Charles de Gaulle Airport, and I met my husband on the first day.
No way. This
Yes,
is so romantic.
Well, that's the short story. The longer story is I was teaching French at the University of Montana, and I was coming to France to teach in Alsace, near the German and Swiss border, but there was a strike. So Air France went on strike. So instead of flying into Alsace, as I was supposed to the airport in Mulhouse, I was rerouted to Paris. And I had a French colleague in Montana who I'd helped out quite a lot. I had him stay in my apartment. I helped him find an apartment, get a bank account set up, explaining a little bit about Social Security, you know, things that
Yes.
foreigners who are going to be working in the States need to know. Introduced him to my friends. So then when it was my turn to come to France, he said, well, I have a brother, maybe he could help you.
Oh
And
my God.
so
Oh my
he's
God.
been helping me for 20 years.
That's just so wonderful because we all romanticize Paris. You know, we've watched a million movies and you know, nobody can ever explain standing at the top of the Eiffel Tower and looking out as far as the eye can see in any direction is Paris. You know, you see the gold domes of all the wonderful places. And even in New York, I've been to the top of the World Trade Centers and everything. You can see beyond the city. You can see all the Central Park and you can see all the, you know, the statue. You can see beyond. But in Paris, I think that's the biggest city that I've ever visited. I believe it's one of the largest, top 5 in the world cities. And so how did you, when you first came there, how long did it take you to navigate?
Well, it took me a long time. I started working in Alsace and I had a really lovely group of coworkers. I was a teaching assistant, so I had a teaching degree, but I wasn't considered a teacher here. So I was an assistant in the classroom. So there was a head teacher or a main teacher, and then I was helping out. And so in Alsace, I really enjoyed it. It was maybe a slower pace of life and people were a little kinder. In Paris, it's a big city, so people are always in a rush and there are always long lines anywhere you go. So people just don't have the time. So I just had trouble. I just struggled when I was in Paris. So I joined the American Library in Paris to hopefully meet friends. I started volunteering there. I led workshops, writing workshops. And eventually I got a job there.
It's just great. You know, I think I myself always fantasized about working in a library because I held librarians in such big regard. I begged my mother to finally take me to the Eureka Carnegie Library, and I'll never forget, her name was Mrs. Milliken. And she was this silver-haired lady with the little readers. And she treated me like the most important person in the world and never had that happen to me before. Nobody ever really paid any attention to me. I was just, I think maybe a 3rd or 4th grader. And I remember filling out the card and going downstairs to the children's library and just blown away by how many, because we didn't have many books in our home. So to take your child to a library. I mean, when I had a Girl Scout troop later, I couldn't believe none of them had library cards. So I took them to the library and got them library cards, because when you give children a library card, or even an adult, it will change. It opens the world. Everything is there. You know, all the stories. It's so wonderful. So I can't thank all the librarians. I've had enough. And I'm sure that, do you work with children at all or just mostly adults at the
Well,
library?
I was doing the programming, so I took care of book clubs. I helped write the newsletter, and then we had a program in the evening called Evenings with Authors. And so I was in charge of contacting the authors, setting up evening events, welcoming the public, making sure everything went smoothly. And so that was really my role. But I think it was a really wonderful role because it was a way I got to meet the public every week. We had a lot of regulars, so I saw the same people. I saw a lot of new people, and it just was really a great way to be a part of the community. So I will always treasure my time at the library.
Now, are the books you reading in English? Or are they in French or both?
Well, when I worked at the library, we had speakers from all over the world. For example, we had Remember Sarah's Key by
Oh,
Tatiana de
yeah.
Ronay. So she's Franco-British, but when she came to the library, she spoke in English. If she went to other venues in Paris, she would have spoken French. So we've had people from all over the world speak. Their events would be in English.
Well, you know, as we're talking, I'm always thinking ahead. And I'm thinking to myself, we're an international book club, but yet we really haven't got a whole lot of connection to other book clubs or other places that in other countries that have like-mindedness. So, you know, you hear about sister cities, you know,
Mhm.
a city will adopt a city in Japan or Paris or whatever. Perhaps if there's a book club there, we could develop a sister brotherhood. Maybe once a month we could, you know, Zoom and have a conversation. You know, it would help me to refresh my French, and it would help them maybe to, you know, get a perspective on English. Wouldn't that be fun?
It would
I
be fun.
I really think this would be exciting, and it's something that just came to me from what you were just saying. I get the best ideas from authors. I
Oh,
really do. And
wow.
what we are doing is we're sharing each other's stories, and what it's doing is it's helping us connect. And the more we understand people from other countries, the more empathy, the more kindness, and how wonderful, you know. And then maybe when we come back to France, you know, because I'd
Yeah.
love to do when the world opens up again, we could come for a visit. Wouldn't that be fun?
It would be spectacular.
I know. We'll continue this conversation, but let's get back to your book. Your book is so well researched, and it has amazing. You've been sharing all these amazing pictures of the real people involved in this. And I know the one thing I know from librarians is they do the research. I mean, I lived at the University of Texas campus library, and we had our own art history librarian. And I'm telling you, to this day, I just adore this woman, but young woman. And so the research, how much of your work was involved with that before you even put it onto paper?
Well, first I'll say I would love it if you would just write an essay about the librarians you have known and loved, because you speak with such love about them and you remember their names and
Oh, I know every
specifically
single one of
and
them. I would love to
specifically
do that.
yeah, so I just think that would be beautiful. I just you ode to the librarians because you
I
speak so
actually,
passionately about them.
I actually have a story in my first book, The Pulpwood Queens Tear Wearing Book Sharing Guide to Life, about that first visit to the Eureka Carnegie Library. And in my new book coming out, The Pulpwood Queen Goes Back to School, because I'm a lifelong learner, I'm going to be telling the story about my librarian friend at the University of Texas, because she was very, I'm not a technology person. So I had to learn JSTOR. I had to learn, I had to learn all these way microfiche and all these things that I had to learn how to use. So I will do that and I'll send it to you. I love a challenge, and maybe you could do the same. We'll share stories. You
Yes,
could
that
write
would be
one
so
about your, why did you become a librarian? I mean,
well. My first librarian was a really scary one, and anyone in Shelby, Montana would say the same. The words Mrs. Kinchlow strike fear into the heart of even grown men who are 6'4". You know, she had this beautiful white hair pulled back into a bun. She had, the cat eye glasses
On a
on a
chain.
chain. She was so glamorous and beautiful. But, if she told the high school boys, shh, my gosh, they shushed. She just was just very impressive. And then right next to her, there was Mrs. Grady, who was more grandmotherly. And if you put a book back in the wrong place, you knew you wouldn't go before the firing squad. She would help you find it. And she was actually, the movie 3 Days of the Condor by with Robert Redford and Faye Dunaway. It was 6 Days of the Condor with James Grady. And so Mrs. Grady was James Grady's mother. And so he grew up in Shelby, Montana, and his mom was a librarian and his dad owned the movie theater. And so you can see why he became a writer, because of his love of books and his love of story and cinema. So that's where I grew up in Shelby. And I'm not a librarian by training. By training, I'm an English teacher. I just had the incredible chance of working at a library.
Yeah. My very first hair salon was under the balcony of the Princess Theater. It was the old Princess Barbershop. And on Thursday nights, that's when I cut all the men's hair that worked, and I get a big bag of popcorn, and we cut their hair and we listen to the movie because we could hear it perfectly. Because the little shop, 2-station shop, was right underneath the balcony section of the theater. And so, yeah, I grew up with a love of film, and that's why I have the book and film club too, because of course I read a book like yours and then I think, wouldn't this make it would make a wonderful documentary, like a Ken Burns type documentary with music and these characters and the photographs, but it would also make a great series too, because I love period piece. I just watched a wonderful Egyptian um, period movie set at the turn of the last century up into the 40s, and I was just blown away with the costumes. And that's the
And the
one thing I
hair,
love.
the
I love
hairstyles and the
I was
clothes.
trying to look French, I was thinking I couldn't find my pearls, so I put on some chains, but I was trying to do the Chanel thing. But I really love everything about this country. It's fascinating to me, and I can't wait to come back. So
Yes, I hope you'll be able to. I hope the world opens up again. And
me too. And the first time I saw Paris, we actually left. We took a water taxi in Venice to the train station, and we took the night train into Paris. So, and then I tell the story of my 13-year-old daughter seeing the Eiffel Tower for the first time. It'll make me cry because she looked out the window when she saw it. Tears were running down her face because I'd read her all those Madeline books with the Eiffel Tower, and and in fact, she named her little sister when she was born Madeline after those books. So to be there, she felt like she had already lived this French life. She wanted to be a chef when she was little, and she still is a really a great cook. But all those images that we have, it's also interesting to me that we have these images of France and everything there, and then they see, when you tell them you're from Texas, they expect us to all be wearing cowboy hats and wrangling steers. And I've seen more cowboys in Kansas than I've ever seen in Texas. And of course, I live in the wooded, piney woods of Texas, which is more almost Southern than Texan. We're a big state. So, and I'm sure in Montana, they see, big sky country. They probably expect you to, dress a certain way. And the expectations, I think it always surprises people.
Yes, no, well, in Texas, I think French people really, growing up, I think my husband watched Westerns with his father, and he's seen more Westerns. He knows all the Westerns, all the spaghetti Westerns as well. So I thought that was really interesting that he'd seen all these films that I, as an American, hadn't yet seen. So it is interesting. Sometimes we like other places or other destinations rather than our own neck of the woods. And so I know the more I'm away from Montana, the more I'm homesick for it and the more I appreciate it. But when I was there as a teen, I couldn't see how lucky I was.
Yeah, the big sky, Kansas, it's just, you can see from horizon. Seeing stars at night is hard here because the trees are so high. So when I go home, I just marvel at the stars but so you've been there 20 years. How many times have you been back and forth?
Well, usually I go twice a year, but I haven't been back since March of 2020. I was doing pre-publication work for the book, so I was in Chapel Hill meeting with booksellers, and then Boston, and then Toronto, and then we were supposed to go to San Francisco and to Seattle and New York, and so that bit of the tour got canceled, but. I feel really lucky. I'd never been to Boston, so it was really, I hadn't been to Chapel Hill in ages, never been to Toronto. So just this book has opened so many horizons, and just the great people that you meet as an author. And you just meet so many wonderful readers, and you connect with people in a different way. So it's very exciting. So I'm really happy that we're doing Zoom today. And 2020 was the year we all learned to Zoom. So it's
that could be a quote. The year we all learned to Zoom. That's so true. So well, it's exciting. And when the book does come out in paperback, hopefully everything then but how many have you been published in other languages now with your book, or is it in the works?
My first book was published in 10 languages, and then this one will come out in 27 different languages. So
27. Oh my goodness. And every library in the world will have your book.
I hope so. I really hope so. It's been really fun to talk to librarians and get their feedback. So
well, tell me about your first book, because I'm not aware of it.
Oh, my first book, it's called Moonlight in Odessa. I lived in Odessa, Ukraine for 2 years on the Black Sea. It's a beautiful city with French and Italian architecture, has the most beautiful opera house. And the book is about the booming business of email order brides. I worked there full-time as a teacher in a local high school. I earned $25 a month, but my rent was $100 a month. It was paid for by the foundation that sent me over there for 2 years to teach. But it's just to say how these amazing Ukrainian women who are so, they're so well educated, they speak so many languages, yet they don't have an economic future in their own country. So they marry men they don't know from America or Western Europe to in hopes of a better life. And so 2 of my really good Ukrainian friends did this. And that's I can't even say that's how I got interested in this story, because I'm from Montana, and already in Montana we have a history of mail order brides. So
that is fascinating. That's really fascinating. I've got to read that book. So it's everybody, Moonlight in Odessa.
Odessa. I'll send you a copy, Cassie. I'd be very happy to do that.
I can't wait to read it, because these are the kinds of stories I don't think I've ever read, other than the musical Seven Brides for Seven Brothers, or I'm trying to think. There was a Bobby Sherman show when I was in junior high about up in the Pacific Northwest of having mail order brides. But that sounds fascinating.
Well, the first mail order brides that arrived in America arrived in 1620. And they arrived to be the wives of colonists in Virginia. They were called tobacco brides, because their husbands when they married, their husbands reimbursed the cost of the ship passage with 120 pounds of fine leaf tobacco. So you can see that it's a 400-year, I don't want to say tradition, but it's been going on for 400 years now. So, and it's still happening. In 2015, 35,000 women came to the United States on K-1 90-day fiance visas. So
I've got
it
to
really
read
is a
this book.
thing.
And see, that's what I'm always looking for, is the story that I have not heard or been told before. There's so many great stories. Oh, this is fabulous. So are you working on a new book?
Well, I'm doing some research for a new book, but mainly I'm just enjoying this one finally being out. Thank you for celebrating my pub date with me, Kathy. It's just been.
Everybody, you've got to read The Paris Library. It has the most wonderful cover, and I just love it. I don't know if you all remember this, but I can remember, writing my first cursive words with Louise Murphy on the library card. I think they still have that original library card at my hometown library. Now, the Eureka Carnegie Library has sold, it's a private residence now. I'm so jealous. I think I would have loved to lived in that, but they built a $1 million new beautiful library, and my childhood classmate is the head librarian. So it's
Oh,
really funny, but this will be one that everybody needs to have for their library. And I'm really excited that this is one of our reads for the month. So we will definitely have to have you back. And I can't wait to read this new book. So this is a big day for you. How many things have you got going on to talk about your book?
I had 4 events today, so this is number 2, and then I have 2 more events. But it's really wonderful. I love connecting with readers, and after writing the book and researching it for 10 years, it is just exciting to have it out on the bookshelf. So thank you so much for having me today. It's
Well,
just been so fun to see you
everybody
again.
has been telling me that you're up on my Kathy L. Murphy YouTube channel, and everybody has told me how wonderful it was. But again, so many of my book club members are librarians or retired librarians, educators. We all are on the same page when it comes to the importance of reading. I want to ask you too, if you could think of one book that you've read recently that just stood out in your mind, I would like to know, for you as a reader, what do you personally like to read?
Well, I love to read everything. My all-time favorite is Bel Canto. Recently,
Oh, yeah.
I read The Paris Librarian by Mark Pryor, and it takes place in the American Library in Paris. It's a murder mystery, and he describes the library has been completely renovated since I worked there, but he wrote it. It's been published recently, but when he wrote it, it was the same exact layout as when I worked there. So reading his book, it felt like I was going home to the library. So
Oh,
it was very
that's
fun
a
to
fair too.
read. It's very fun to read. And when his book came out in 2016, I almost had a heart attack because it was called The Paris Librarian. And mine is the Paris Library. So I was afraid that he'd scooped me and that he'd already written about the Paris Library, which he did, but in a different way.
That
So
happens a lot. There'll be 2 books about Vermeer, or and I think, it's just the weirdest thing. It just happens sometimes. There's, I know 2 books out on Coco Chanel. One of them is our pick, and one of them, and it makes it hard because they're both great books, and you just think, oh gosh, I can only pick 12 books a year, so it's really hard for me that's why we have so many bonus books, because I've got to work everybody in. And most of my book club members are voracious readers like me, so they read them all anyway.
well,
But
this one is a mystery and it's completely different. It's modern day, and it's I don't want to give too much away. Someone is murdered in the library and you have to figure out who did it. I did not figure out who did it. It was also a why did it,
Really? Well, that's
why.
even better.
So I just had fun reading it. And now I'm reading a book called Land is War, which takes place on the French Riviera. And it's World War II as well. But I have to say, I'm just admiring, it's so gloomy in Paris that I'm just enjoying spending time on the Riviera in this book, even though it's World War II. I'm still enjoying the sunshine. I'm still enjoying the ocean, the sea. So those are my two books that I'm reading this week.
And so if you were to get away for a holiday, where do you like to go?
Well, I love South Carolina. My parents are snowbirds, and so they go to South Carolina.
And
Uh,
what's a particular
in
city?
Myrtle Beach. They go to Myrtle Beach. My dad's a golfer, so
Oh,
yeah, it is so fun, and I love the South so much.
wow. Oh,
I
me
just
too.
the hospitality, the cuisine, the literature. I love Southern literature. So
I've got
yes.
a lot of Pulpwood Queens there.
Mhm.
So, in fact, I had a chapter in Myrtle Beach, but I've got Charleston, Hilton Head, Savannah, Beaufort. So, if you get back, we will set you up. You know, the Pat Conroy Center's in Beaufort, South
Yes,
Carolina, and I
yes.
love to go there. It
Mm.
is absolutely one of the most beautiful places I think in the world.
Yes, yes, it really is. It's so beautiful. And Charleston, I mean, you just can't beat Charleston either. It is just amazing.
I had to go to the Citadel and tool around and see South Abroad, like Pat Conroy's book.
Yes,
But
yes.
every place I go is always a literary adventure. So if there's one literary spot that you could go in France, what would you recommend?
Well, there's a museum. It's the Franco-American Museum, and it's in the north of France. And it is about the French-American friendship that started, even with the French world, with the American Revolution, through World War I, through World War II. So America's contributions to France, some paintings, some Franco-American paintings, things like this. And it is just a wonderful, wonderful museum. It's kind of out of the way. There's no train station, so I don't get there very often, but I've been 4 times and I really enjoy it every single time. I just absolutely love it. It's in a teeny tiny village, but there's right across from the museum, there's a wonderful restaurant hotel. So I really enjoy it. My husband and I have gone there. We've gone there with my parents, and I have such good memories. I've gone there with a book group. We all went together, so it just was really a treat.
That sounds fabulous. Well, I know that we only had a day and a half in Paris, and I mean, what can you do in a day and a half? We thoroughly did the Eiffel Tower and really just spent time just walking and seeing the sights. But when I go back, I've got to see Versailles, and I want to go to the Sèvres porcelain,
Oh yeah,
because I did a paper on that for one of my art history classes, and it's
wow.
the whole Marie Antoinette and all the. I love the Rococo period, and everybody goes, really, all that baby blue and pink. And I said, the cherubs, the
So
ribbons, the
beautiful. The
shells.
details, yes, the details are so
I just
beautiful.
love it.
Yes.
And there's a wonderful museum in New York, the Frick, and they've
Mhm.
got this whole Rococo. It's fabulous. But I like going off the beaten path and seeing those little museums and tiny. Don't they have an Audubon? It's the mechanical um, museum there somewhere too, where trying to think of, they have one in Brooklyn, but they're mechanical things where like they have
Yes,
a little man drawing, and it's
yes.
all done like clock.
I haven't seen that one, but the one I would go to that's off the beaten path is in the Parisian area, and it's the house of Josephine Bonaparte, and I've never been there. I've never been there, and I'm really kicking myself. I don't know, I've been here for 20 years, but it's one of those things where you just think, oh, I'll do it eventually. And you just have to make a date. And, when you work for yourself, you just have to
Yeah.
stop working sometimes and get out of your apartment. So, but
Well,
I would love to see where Josephine lived, to see her roses. And
they
I
had
read,
a huge exhibition in Louisiana because this has such a French, and it was her and Bonaparte. They had it was for and maybe the 100th anniversary, and I went to it. It was fascinating, and they were a fascinating couple, and so I'll have to check that out. That sounds really neat. Sounds like a lot of fun. So, what is the one thing that you want to if you the takeaway thing that you would want for people reading your book, if you could have, I always think, why am I writing this book? Who's it for? And what do I want people to leave from the experience? Do you have some thoughts on that?
well, I wrote this book as a love letter to book people, to libraries, to librarians, to bookstores, to booksellers. So it's just, I hope, a celebration of the written word, and to authors, who have now passed away, but their words live on inside us. And then from there, I feel like we need to listen. So often we're talking, and sometimes we forget to listen. And so the story of Lily and Odile, who really listen to each other and really understand who they are, and they help each other. Sometimes we don't know who our neighbors are, we don't know who our friends are, and everybody has a past that we don't know about, or even an inner life that we don't know about. And so I hope that people will come away from the book curious about who their friends and family members are, and willing to listen.
Oh, it's wonderful. I think it's perfect that your book came out Valentine month
Oh,
because, who doesn't love a library? I know I do. And I think this is absolutely the perfect Valentine's gift for a book lover because, or anybody that just wants to read a beautiful story, the power of the stories, the power of the people who share the stories. And it's so much fun. So, we're going to be going back to Breathless Bubbles and Books. And the wonderful thing about you is you're the first person that I've ever had guest host in the now 2 years that I've been doing this with Breathless Bubbles and Books to post all your posts. All I have to do is share them every day. I am impressed, but I don't know about you, but a bottle of the bubbly with this book,
sounds so nice. It sounds so nice. Well,
happy
as
Valentine's Day to us.
yes, yes. Well, as a programs manager, I was so stressed out all the time, because when you depend on information from other people, and getting the news for the newsletter, and everything. So I remember very well. I haven't worked at the library since 2012, but I remember very well the stress I felt waiting for information to come in.
So many things are when I'm not doing them, they're out of your control. So to have you do this, you are a blessing to me because
Oh, thank
it's
you.
like herding cats, trying to get everybody to be at the right place. How we pulled off this first virtual girlfriend
So
weekend, was it
amazing.
not amazing?
It was, and I'm sure it was just nonstop. I'm sure you probably were ready to collapse just from stress, and different time zones, and getting everybody together. But it was fabulous. Everybody enjoyed it, and I certainly enjoyed the different speakers, and
It's
just the range of people who spoke too was funny, um, and deep, and both at the same time, funny and deep. So it was just really
And you
great.
can watch it. They're all posted on the Kathy L. Murphy YouTube channel now. So everybody can watch them. I decided that it was really important that people hear the stories. And um, because we all are in this little spot in the world. And even if you're in a big city like Paris or a little place like Holly Lake Ranch, we all just get caught up in our own world. So to be able to have your world explode, I was not tired at all. Saturday, I was on Zoom for 16 hours but I was running on sheer adrenaline because this is the party I most want to go to. These are the people I want to hear their story. And the more I learn about you, the more I want to know. So I'm going to get that essay going. And I would love to do once a month, connect with a book club or, what's the library suggests we read? What are you reading? What are we reading? And maybe get that conversation going between the two countries. Wouldn't that not? It's like a Zoomathon pen pal experience.
Yes,
Did you have a pen pal as a kid?
I did. I had several. Yes, I loved it. Yes, I had 2 French pen pals, and it was just wonderful.
I loved pen pals, but I was a big letter writer with my Snoopy stationery. We actually had a stationery store in my hometown called the Red Owl Stationery. And I used to just, most people would go, I don't know, toy stores. To me, the smell when I go in there, because they carried books and Bibles and they did the engravings and stationaries. And in the 5th grade, I got my first typewriter. I still have it.
Wow.
And I taught myself to type with the book that came with it. And, I still have this thing about, well, if you look over here, you can see a few of my collection of vintage typewriters.
Wow. Oh my gosh, I love it.
I had more.
Amazing.
I had more when I had my big house, but I kept the little ones because they're just, such a part of me. But I want to hear more. I can't wait to see what's coming down the road. And we definitely want to have you back. Everybody's in love with you, Janet.
Oh, well, thank you so much.
Story
Thank
is
you.
incredible. And I know that your husband, does he read your books? Does he?
He does. Yes, he does. He helped me with the French. I didn't translate the book. I do not have the gift of translation. But when we were kind of looking at the French translation when it first arrived, my husband read a page in English and then a page in French, a page in English and a page in French. So he read the book twice at the same time. That's how he.
That is such a gift.
So yes,
that kind of support is so important.
Yeah, it was very nice. No, it was very nice to be able to ask questions about the certain French phrases and things like that. So no, it was, translators are really amazing, and Eddie's just been wonderful throughout this whole process, because it's, just as with the computers and technology and Zoom and everything,
it's opened our world.
yes.
I think about riding my bike down to the library, and we didn't have cell phones, and we never used the library's phone. Our parents we'd say we're riding our bikes to the library, and they just, nobody thought anything of it. Nowadays, can you imagine? And me, I get lost there for hours, and nobody ever said, where have you been? Why didn't you check in? No, just the freedom of those days. But I'm quite a bit older than you. You probably didn't have that same experience, but
no, I'm 49, and I did have that same experience where there was just that freedom. And even today, some people, when the phone rings, we don't want to answer it. We're kind of apprehensive about who could be calling. And before, in the 70s, we just answered the phone. We didn't even think about it. We didn't worry about it. We didn't look at it. Who could that be? Is it a telemarketer who's going to bother us, or a scammer? So it's true. It's
a phone call was like a letter. It was like, good news or bad news, is like the telegram, you didn't want to get that telegram, from the military. But you look forward to answering the phone. We even had party lines. Did you have that up in Montana?
Well, I did. I actually did in Ukraine. And so I would be talking to my parents and be super homesick and super emotional, and someone would get on my party line, and I'd be like, get off my phone, and they'd say, get off my phone. And we'd fight it out as to who would speak when. And it's funny now, but I can tell you at the time it wasn't funny at all.
No, because you have a limited amount of time to talk to them, and you do not. How many people would be on the line, on one line?
I don't know how many people were on one line, but if I was on the phone, sometimes someone else would be on that same line and would want to talk to, would want to make a call and things like that. So,
It was more for us kids a form of entertainment because my grandparents was on the party line, and we get in and we listen to the neighbors gossiping, and they go, "Is that one of Helen's girls on the line?" My grandmother would, click it, real quick. But we were pretty little at the time. But they had party lines in East Texas when I moved here for many, many years. They finally, I think they're gone now. But it's amazing how much the technology has even changed in my lifetime. But can you imagine this century? My grandson, who's going to be 2, can you imagine what I mean,
I can't.
I can't even, I'm trying to,
Can't
there'll be
imagine.
flying cars. I mean, we always joked about it with the Jetsons, but I really do think those things are happening. But I am very excited about your book. Thank you so much for making us a big part of your book launch today.
Oh, well,
And
thank
we're going to
you.
be meeting tonight and celebrating. And I will have I'll have this loaded on YouTube. So I'll send everybody over to the YouTube channel. And when it gets posted, I'm going to send it to you so you can go ahead.
I'll go ahead and link it on my Facebook page. All right. Well, thank you, Kathy, so much. It's just been such a pleasure to talk to you again. Thank you.
Well, happy birthday. And because we're breathless over your new book, I've got to show you. Bubbles!
I love it. Oh, that is so fun.
So, well, I'm doing something crazy tonight too. I'll be taping it too, so you can watch it later also. But celebrating the big book launch of the Paris Library with Janet Skeslien Charles. Happy book birthday. Thank you, Simon and Schuster, for making this happen. We cannot thank you enough for sending us that original galley, but those galleys do get read, and next year you'll be one of the nominees for the bonus book of the year. So
thank you.
Yeah. So thank you very much. Have a wonderful day. And until I see you, au revoir. We'll see you down the road. And it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much, Janet.
Thank you, Kathy. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Au revoir.
Au revoir.